Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome back to Wood by Wright 2. Today we are doing the final step on the bed. We're doing all the finishing touches, putting the finishing on it and putting it all together and doing the final pictures. I'm really excited because this has been a day I've been waiting for a long time. So let's dive in and take a look at how to finish this beast. So let's actually start this off with some epoxy. I'm using some West Systems epoxy, and then I'm going to be mixing in this trans tint dye. I'll try and leave a link to those down below, but these are great for filling in cracks and voids, and there are a lot of knot holes and cracks and bug holes and things like that in these boards, just to smooth them out, make them nice, and make them a little bit prettier. It doesn't really have to happen, it just makes it a good bit simpler and cleaner look on the outside. And plus I do like the natural feel on that, especially when you put the coat on it. You can see there's basically 6 or 7 boards that need it, and most of them are pretty good, but some of them, particularly the 2 top plates, need a lot of work. The only problem with the epoxy is that it leaves this pile on top you have to get rid of. And most of the time my initial idea is grab a chisel and chisel it off, or grab a plane and plane it off, but both of those usually run into problems of gumming up, and they're just not as easy. And if you use a sander, you're going to be sanding all the wood around it. So a card scraper is my choice. It actually goes through the epoxy very, very quickly, and it's the very next thing you're going to need on the wood anyways for smoothing, so why not just go ahead and use the card scraper? And it actually eats through the epoxy incredibly fast. A very, very pleasing topic. Sometimes I will use the cabinet scraper, but most of the time I just find the card scraper is a little better because I can focus on each little dollop of epoxy, making sure that those don't have any particular issues. The next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be scraping, planing, and smoothing everything down. I'm not going to be sanding this. I want the last thing that touches the wood to be a plane or a card scraper, or a cabinet scraper in this case. Well, actually, I'm still taking off some of the epoxy here. But it's basically the same step of cleaning off the epoxy as to finishing it out and smoothing it out. Just want to make sure that all the surfaces are cleaned and ready and set up for the work. The other thing I need to do is address the tenons. They're all longer than they need to be, but I want them to be through tenons that then stick out a 1/4 inch farther on the other side. So I'm marking off a 1/4 inch farther than the through line that I put on there, and then cutting them off at that length. So I'm marking a 1/4 inch away from that line, and then drawing a new line, and this is the line that I'm going to cut to, and that way the tenons will be sticking out 1/4 inch past the surface that they come through. So after marking them off, we can cut them out. And I'm going to do this on all of the tenons, so the stretchers that go headboard to footboard, as well as the stretchers that go across the footboard and across the headboard. And then we're going to chamfer them back. So there's a reason I drew that line where they stick through, and that is the line I can chamfer them back to at a 45 around all 4 sides. Gives you that nice little diamond shape sticking through with a flat surface. I just like that chamfered look. It says finished and clean. Even on the larger ones, it's just easier to grab the low angle plane, skew it a bit, and run them down, and you get a really nice clean chamfered edge all the way around these. And when they stick through the mortise and pop out the other side, it looks good. Now we need to make the pins, because all of the mortise and tenons are drawboard into place. So we're cutting off, I think it was 20 of these I needed to make. These are oak dowels. I just went to the store and bought them rather than making my own, just for how large they are. That works out well. Just had to drill the hole the appropriate side for it. So one by one we cut them all off, and then we needed to shape the end so that they would fit in. Actually, we're going to do that here in a minute. So let's get to the smoothing. All of the surfaces on every board need to be finished smooth. Get off any pencil marks, get off any any marking knife marks, get off anything that would be causing any issue. And in most cases, that's just taking off 1/1000th or 2/1000th of an inch worth of wood. Some places I have to work a little bit harder if there's a dent or a ding I want to clean out. And we can smooth it all down to the touch, make it feel good and happy. I really like this part because it's just when the natural wood comes through and everything starts to shine. We're also going to be chamfering most of the edges. Most of the edges are just getting 1 or 2 passes, but the legs are actually getting a fairly heavy chamfer because they're the exterior edge of the whole structure. So we're going to chamfer those corners down, and then continue on with the scraping and sanding. On a lot of these edges, rather than hitting them with a plane, I find it a lot easier to go with the card scraper, particularly on these, because the grain is switching. These stretchers that go across the headboard and footboard have a curved section, and so the grain goes one way on one side and then the other way on the other side, and so it's easier to hit them with a card scraper. And then chamfering those, it's just one pass with the spoke shave, and we have that lightly chamfered edge. Okay, let's get back to those dowel pins. We need to actually taper the end so that they will go through the hole and suck up the tenon really nice and tight. And so we're just going to take the chisel and round off the corner so it has a slightly sharp edge that will go through and then fit into the hole of the tenon. And it's 20 of these to do. They're all a good bit longer than they need to be. I think they were like 1.5 inches longer than they need to be because I'm going to end up cutting them off when they're all done. Now it's time for assembly. Yay! Happy times! We're going to start by putting the stretchers into the legs of the headboard, the footboard in this case, and we'll do the same in a bit for the headboard. And then we can start putting in all the panels. You have to leave the stretchers a little bit loose so you have wiggle room to wiggle the panels down in, and then you can pound the whole thing together. Slide them down into place and make sure it's all fit and ready to go. Hey, I like how that fits it together. It makes me very pleased. And so we can start pounding this together. You can see how the tenon will then pop through 1/4 inch and just be slightly proud there. Now to put in the drawbore pegs, we can put them in. They go through the leg, through the tenon, through the other leg, and come out the other side. I'm just leaving them long at this moment. We're going to be cutting them out. This is one of the 2 things that I'm gluing on this. I'm not gluing any of the rest of this frame. It's all just sitting there. I'm just gluing these in because I don't ever want them to come out. I guess I don't have to. I could have left them alone, but I decided to glue them in. And if I really need to take this apart, I can drill them out and take it apart. But I want to glue them, so I'm going to glue them. So you can see they go all the way through, and they'll actually suck the tenon in because the tenons are off center of the mortise holes. And if you want to see that, I have several videos on how to make drawbore tenons. Now for the hash work, you have to assemble all this hash work on one side first, and I actually connect all the hash together, then put all of the hash into one of the 2 stretchers, and then put the second stretcher into place. It is a bit fiddly to get it all to work in there, but if you take your time, it will eventually all start popping into place and making me happy. Then once that is all together, then we can put that into the leg. And hey, it fits almost like it was intended to do that. Kind of cool. Then like on the footboard, we can put in the panels. And take our time on this, make sure that everything fits in well, popping all of the pieces into their mortises, and ooh, that just feels good when it actually pops into place. And then of course put the other leg on, and this locks it all together. And just like with the footboard, then we're going to drive in the pins and lock it all together with the drawbore tenons. And that's about it for the actual construction of the headboard and footboard. The last little bit we need to put together is putting on this 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch section onto the side stretchers. Now a lot of people are going to say, ooh, is that really enough? You're just gluing them on there. Yes, the glue is far stronger than it needs to be. And if I really worried about it, then I would drill some holes and put in dowels. But I don't worry about it at all. It's plenty strong enough. So now we need to get back to the final finishing. The drawbore tenons, all of them come through and will get chamfered off in a little bit. The only one is that one of them comes through the dovetail slot. And so I need to actually trim it off flush so that we can put in the corbels into that dovetail slot. So I'm going to chop down and pare out and clean it back, and then we can cut it off perfectly flush with the inside of this sliding dovetail slot. And here we go, ready? 1, 2, 3, pop! That's so happy. So yes, you won't see all of them, you'll just see the one on the bottom. For everything else, we're going to cut them off at 1/4 inch out. So just like with the tenons, these will be protruding 1/4 inch. So I grab the flush cut saw and cut them off. I have a little scrap of wood that is 1/4 inch, and I put that on the side and then flush cut off to that scrap. And that just makes it much easier to make sure that they're all the same height, clean them off, and I don't have to worry about doing them ahead of time. And then I'm going to chamfer these round pegs into square tips. So a little chamfer on 4 sides of the round peg, leading them in a square edge, and this makes them match rather nicely with the through tenons. I just like the design and look of that. It's something that personally I find very, very pleasing. So I take the chisel, come at them from all sides, and clean them up. Most of the time it's beveled down here because I want to make sure I'm not running into the wood, and so this allows me to have a bit of an up force, so I'm actually aiming away from the surface below. Once we get all those done, then we can move on to a lot more of the other detail. But yes, there are 20 of these pins, and that means I need to trim them off 40 times. It takes a good bit of work, but it's well worth it. Now we have all these corbels that we made a while ago. We need to lock those into place. The 2 on the end are dovetailed into slot, and so we're testing them into place, and then those will also get glued down in. This is the other time where I'm using glue. because the corbels that connect in the middle actually are not dovetailed in, and so I just want to glue those down in place. So once the head, the top plate is locked in place, then we can start putting all the corbels into it and making sure everything fits up. We're going to do the same thing on the headboard, pound them into place, work them all into the dovetail slot, and then glue in the corbels, make sure that they all fit in. Ooh, we're on to finish, yay, happiness! Oh man, I love how this comes out, especially with all the figure in these panels. They're just absolutely beautiful, and the detail that comes out in that is very, very pleasing. I'm using water locks, and this is it's a very protective finish. I actually did my floors with it, and it is incredibly durable. It goes on really easily. I'm just using a rag. I'm putting on 5 coats. I'll put on 4 straight away, and then after it sets up, then I will sand it with 400 grit sandpaper, and then put on a 5th coat. So it's a very easy finish to put on. As long as you don't have any drips, it just is really, really quick and easy. We also need to make the bed supports. These are pine 1x4s that go in and actually support the bed. They'll sit on top of the frame, and they're supposed to be just shy of 5 foot long. And so I grabbed a 10-foot board and then cut them down. So now I have 10 of these bed supports. And we're going to take it outside to put it together. Why outside? Because there's amazing lighting and there's lots of room. I can wiggle the camera around. So now that the footboard is all assembled, we can slide in the stretchers that go from end to end, stand that up, and then we can bring out the headboard. And from this point on, it's just a lot of pounding and tapping and wiggling things into place. And it goes together rather easily because the stretchers that go from headboard to footboard are slightly loose. They're not incredibly tight, and that's because they're intended to go together and come apart. Once those have been driven into place, then we can put in these pins. And originally I was using a block to protect the steel, but then I realized, wait a second, the steel is actually stronger than the mallet, so let's just use the mallet. You can see how those pins go through and hold everything into place, and if you want to in the future, you can get a hammer hook on them and pull them out. Now we can put in the bed supports that we created earlier, and you can see how those will sit in and span across the stretchers and the mid stretcher, and everything then fits into place, and we can put a mattress in on top of this. So there is the bed frame, and I am incredibly happy with how this came out. And yes, it is very comfortable to sleep on, and I have been enjoying that thoroughly. I hope you enjoy this too, because it is a lot of fun. So there you have it. The bed is done, and I am so excited. This is it's finally here. I'm looking forward to taking it inside and actually sleeping on it tonight. So yes, you may be wondering why I'm not actually in my bedroom. It's because my bedroom isn't big enough to get a full shot of the bed. So we're out here in the yard. So if you do like to follow along with this, I do have the plans for this available on my website. You can go and download those now. I do have a link to that down below. So this has been an incredibly fun project. I'm looking forward to doing a compilation video where I go through the entire thing coming up here soon. So stay tuned for that. And I'm looking forward to the next build. I'm probably gonna be making a desk, but we will see in the future. If you have any questions, thoughts, or ideas, let me know those down below. Also, if you did like the video, please hit like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell. You know those things. They really do help out the channel, and thank you for that. So I think that's about it for today. And until next time, have a magical day. Finally, we can put this project to bed.